out on two legs. They speak. Can you see this wonderful place? Just look around you. It is ground. You cannot see it. When you look, ground goes flat. You are looking. Yet there is a way to tell. Anything flat ends. Whoops, no gravity. Everything on ground throws off into space. Passenger trains in North America, bananas and gauchos in South, elephants both African and Asian. The Inuit, a strange, nearly cubicle house-like dwelling, hovers over Central Europe for a moment or two, then is thrown off a whirling mud wheel. The next lecture is entitled, well, we should have spring break in there somewhere, I suppose. The next lecture is entitled The Airliner's Shadow. Hiding the sun above the clouds in an airplane. You see the sun, it's light. Gray, flat sunlight casts ground. You find shadows a house can fall through. Tell old time to watch it. Stick it. Shorten then a clock or a sun. Shadow a box of sand. Pencil the floor over you. Walk away. Change. See what you can do with funny shapes. We're up to the next to last week of a short course on nature. This week's lecture is entitled I Sky. A network of volunteer cameras focused the sky to create planets and stars. At one time, data was fed a computer filter for atmospheric interference. The king speaks. Page, detail the procedure of a discussion forum. And the page comes out with a long list. Mercury, it shines, it stands like the moon, a tiny disk. Venus, it's a star, but it is not. Look for it, follow its naked crescent. Earth. Mars, a fairly challenging amateur. Jupiter, give it 2 or 3 hours to get well of a morning. With a bit of effort, you may see the planet looking southeast. Saturn, telescopically, the entire sky never fails to gasp when people see it. Uranus, unaided, it starts searching the early morning for Lambda Aquarii in the east. Neptune, a different matter, just a tiny blue dot, not yours. Pluto, sure to be a challenge every day of the week. And then finally you get to the end of the short course on nature, and you have one last lecture entitled The Deep Sky. Puzzling and enigmatic, believed to be the most brilliant universe. This story began in the early 1960s when a strong source was defined with great accuracy, and its diameter was found. The object indicated that it allowed total luminosity, much greater than an average galaxy, even though to astronomers it became clear that they were dealing with an object of an entirely new type. They called it by its name, since shortened, identified, and activated to Object Virginis. But the object lies approximately, and though it appears, it only shows a small portion of the Virginis. After you become familiar with the object, switch to a lower scale map. The object's position is marked, a small circle, close, and it should be visible. Oh, here's the title of the new book. That was the short course on nature. I'll read a neutral thing, the full title of this book that's coming out from me this year. Kress said it was titled Glorified or Thermometers of God. That's partially correct, because the full title is Glorified or Thermometers of God, being only the true and unexpurgated, that is, uncut story of the Church of God the Silence and its founder, Suster Rian Moan, including the life and times of that one Cloyd Shoup and his battles with that -1, Creon Clearly, the devil, and Kelly Fenn, bitch and slut, along with how he, that one Cloyd Shoup that is, died and left us all alone, and how we, 1, learned to deal and or cope with that, and 2, discovered the true way to be, that is to say, silent. Good versus evil equals good plus evil. Whew. That's going to be hard to get on the book cover, I suppose. And now, after a sad story and a neutral story, I'll read this one. Apparently it was a crowd pleaser, or this one is actually quite sad. It's a deeply emotional tale called My Confession by Anonymous. And it's kind of like the short course because it also has these little mini chapters. And the first one is called A Note to the Reading Public. Since the current rage among readers and writers is the confession, in which some passionate soul's heart-rending wounds are refashioned as memoir to a leering public, his or her life complete and bare with the grays as well as the black and whites, and by addition or subtraction, take your pick, every color in the all-too-human rainbow as well, I've decided to forego my attempt at serious fiction and instead write my own painful story, my confession, an outpouring of information and testimony, documentary evidence, if you will, forcing from you in return imaginary compassion. The following pages attempt, therefore, to chronicle the themes of my life, holding nothing back and straying not a jot from the truth. Instead of trying to fashion a fictional veracity free of value, belief, futures, commerce, etc., I rely on descriptions of real people, real places, and real events as they were, and in some cases still are, in themselves, with as little embellishment as possible. Each page, then, constitutes a document in its own right, and while certain documents are related to each other in a handy order, no one page requires, demands, or indeed leads into another. Thus, any attempt to adhere to strict linearity is dispensed with, and instead I reckon on the voracious thread of concatenated monuments. Some documents that at first seemed too embarrassing to present in the raw, as it's said, were unceremoniously tossed away, but I have since rescued them from the trash heap and have reconstructed them as best I could with what remained of them. So, the exhibits that found my confession may help the reader or may serve as a hindrance, but to me they are important reference points, channel markers, if you will, in my life, a course surrounded by dangerous shoals, heartbreaking reefs, and vicious sandbars. Chapter 1 is entitled A New Guide to Parenting. Apparently I was not the happiest child. I was loud and liked to shake a rattle my father had picked up in Mexico after the war, a Dia de los Muertos rattle with a happy skeleton head. My father returned to Mexico, sans family, when I turned 4. I scowled at people. I bit them as soon as a tooth cut through my gums. Later, though, I potty trained myself. My mom still tells how at age 1.5, without prompting, I walked into the bathroom one day, took off my shorts and diaper, pooped, wiped myself, then dressed again without any diaper. We laughed, of course, but we were also plenty scared, my mom always said. We stood there, shocked, laughing, but shocked. But even this bathroom coup took on a sinister gloom when one day around age 4, I finished peeing, then stood on the toilet seat and wrapping the curtain cord around my neck, jumped into air. I swung back and forth a few times, realized I couldn't breathe, and tried wildly to get my footing. I eventually landed my feet in the toilet bowl and so saved myself. Was this my cockamamie way of inventing bungee jumping? Was it a kiddie suicide attempt? To this day, I still can't say for sure. Rudimentary tea party. My inability to adjust to life, to avoid courting suicide, that is, continued through my school days, scraping bottom sometime during my junior year of high school. By then, I had ruthlessly cultivated a friend-free world, much to the amusement and chagrin of my schoolmates, who often dithered between trying to force me into some kind of social orbit and ignoring me with a ferocious starkness. I preferred the latter, truth told. Teachers often got into the act, taking me aside with friendly hands on shoulders and quiet voices. So quiet in the case of my chemistry teacher, a taut gal only a year or 2 out of college, that I found myself panting and beset with an embarrassing erection. Asking me what my problems or my goals were, what led me to cutting my hair in such a creative, really, fashion. I follow the insect, was my usual reply. It instructs me in grooming, suggests appropriate goals, soothes me when the occasional problem, the infernal mammal is what the insects calls what we call problems, arises. None of the teachers knew how to proceed from there. Even the plucky young teacher, Mrs. Toe, who related to all school kids on their own terms. A kicky, free-spirit young Mrs. Toe stammered at my response. The insect, our Miss Toe tried. Oh, yes, well, of course. If you were to ask me now about this insect of mine, in solidarity with him, I'd christened myself Nat. I'd stammer too, would prefer to gape at feet or clock hands.